The morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds of Konoha as Naruto Uzumaki dragged himself through yet another day of physical conditioning. His orange jumpsuit was soaked with sweat, and his breathing came in heavy gasps as he performed his 100th lap around the field. Kakashi stood beneath the shade of a large oak tree, reading his eternal copy of Ika Ika Paradise with seemingly no interest in his students' exertions whatsoever. "Come on, Kakashi! Aren't you going to actually train with me today?" Naruto called out, though his voice betrayed his exhaustion. Kakashi didn't look up from his book. "You're still too undisciplined, Naruto. Conditioning comes first. You rush into everything without thinking, which is precisely why you need to build better physical and mental stamina." He turned a page with deliberate slowness. 3 more laps. Naruto groaned but complied. This was their routine these days. Ever since Team 7 had begun training seriously for the Chunin exams, Kakashi had become even more demanding. The silver-haired Jonin had explained that the exams would be the first true test of their capabilities. That ninja from other villages would be far more dangerous than the academy students they'd faced thus far. Sasuke had already begun training with his clan, receiving instruction in advanced fire jutsu and Sharingan techniques from the Uchiha elders. Sakura spent her time under Tsunade's mentorship, learning medical ninjutsu and developing her already impressive chakra control. Naruto, meanwhile, was running laps. It wasn't that he lacked talent. Kakashi had assured him of that. It was simply that Naruto's talent came from his inexhaustible reserves of chakra and his natural vitality, gifts of his status as a Jinchuriki. But raw power without discipline was like a storm without direction. It was destructive but ultimately purposeless. Hence the lapse. By the time Naruto finished his final circuit, sweat poured down his face in rivulets. He collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily, his hands planted firmly on the ground. "Good," Kakashi said, finally closing his book and standing. "Now we practice taijutsu." "Already?" Naruto protested weakly. "I'm exhausted." "Exactly," Kakashi replied, his single visible eye crinkling in what might have been amusement. "A real battle won't wait for you to catch your breath. You need to learn to fight effectively even when you're at your limits. Besides, the Chunin exams will push you far harder than this." Naruto pushed himself back to his feet, calling upon reserves of determination that seemed as inexhaustible as his chakra. This was the price of becoming stronger. There were no shortcuts, no easy days. Even though he dreamed of becoming Hokage since childhood, actually pursuing that dream meant accepting training regimens that sometimes felt impossible. They began their taijutsu practice with Kakashi taking the defensive position. He moved with the fluid grace of a master, his movements economical and precise. Every block was perfectly timed, every counter executed with minimal effort. In contrast, Naruto's strikes were wild, full of enthusiasm but lacking the refinement that years of training provided. "You're still telegraphing your movements," Kakashi observed, blocking a right hook with his forearm. "Your opponent can read you like a book before you even commit to the strike." "Well, maybe you should stop reading books and actually teach me better." Naruto shot back, frustration edging his voice as another of his attacks was effortlessly parried. "Persistence," Kakashi murmured. "At least you haven't lost that." Again. They continued for another hour, with Naruto gradually improving but never quite breaking through Kakashi's defense. This was the nature of their training, small incremental improvements, day after day, building a foundation of skill that would eventually yield significant strength. It was methodical and often tedious, but it was working. Naruto could feel himself becoming faster, stronger, more controlled. As the afternoon wore on, Kakashi decided to show Naruto one of his signature techniques. "Watch carefully," Kakashi instructed, moving to the center of the training field. "I'm going to show you a variation of the lightning blade that I've been developing. It's not ready for active combat, but understanding the principle might help you develop your own techniques." Naruto watched intently as Kakashi formed hand seals with practiced efficiency. Lightning chakra began to crackle around his body, condensing into his right hand. But unlike the traditional lightning blade, which created a sword of pure lightning, this version manifested differently. The lightning compressed into a spiraling vortex, creating a point of intense electrical density. "The key," Kakashi explained, "is to change how you mold the chakra. Instead of creating a broad blade, you're concentrating it into a smaller point. This increases penetrating power at the cost of cutting area. It's useful against heavily armored opponents. Naruto's eyes widened with fascination. He'd seen the lightning blade before. It was one of Kakashi's most fearsome techniques. But this variation was something new entirely. His mind raced, analyzing the hand seals, the way the chakra moved, the timing of its release. Your turn, Kakashi said, dissipating the technique. Let's see if you can replicate the basic concept. Naruto took a deep breath and began forming his own hand seals. He'd learned basic lightning jutsu from scrolls and training, and he'd practiced creating the standard lightning blade many times. But creating a variation required a deeper understanding of how chakra manipulation worked. His hands moved through the seals: tiger, rabbit, rat, monkey. Lightning began to gather around his body, crackling softly. But unlike Kakashi's controlled, deadly creation, Naruto's lightning was wild and unstable. It flickered and jumped erratically, refusing to concentrate into the precise point he was attempting to create. You're forcing it, Kakashi observed. Chakra control isn't about strength. It's about finesse. Guide the energy rather than commanding it. Naruto gritted his teeth in concentration, trying to adjust his approach. His lightning chakra began to calm slightly, clustering more toward his right palm. It wasn't as refined as Kakashi's version, but it was closer. Then something strange happened. A sudden burning sensation erupted across Naruto's entire body, starting from deep within his chest and spreading outward like wildfire. It wasn't painful exactly. It was more like every nerve ending suddenly came alive with electricity. The Nine-Tails chakra, which Naruto usually kept carefully compartmentalized, suddenly surged forward in response to the lightning jutsu. Naruto? Kakashi's voice seemed distant, muffled by the roaring in Naruto's ears. The blonde ninja staggered backward, his vision swimming. A crimson pulse of energy emanated from his body, and the world seemed to distort around him. The training field brightened impossibly, and when Naruto blinked, his vision had changed. He could see everything, not just see, perceive. The entire training field was suddenly visible to him in perfect detail, as if he were viewing it from multiple angles simultaneously. He could sense chakra points, pathways, the exact location of every living thing within a certain radius. It was overwhelming, intricate, and alien to anything he'd ever experienced before. Then, just as suddenly as it had come, the sensation faded. Naruto collapsed to one knee, gasping for breath. His vision returned to normal, limited to his eyes, bound by the natural perspective of a human. But the feeling lingered, a ghost of something vast and fundamental. What was that? Naruto asked, looking up at Kakashi. The Jonin was no longer casually standing near the tree. He moved to a position between Naruto and the training ground's edge, his body tense. His visible eye was wide with an emotion Naruto couldn't quite identify. Behind the mask, Kakashi's expression was hidden, but the sudden shift in his posture spoke volumes. Kakashi? Naruto pressed, pushing himself to his feet. What happened? Kakashi slowly relaxed his stance, though his eye never left Naruto. Your eyes, he said quietly. Show me your eyes. What? Naruto blinked, touching his face. What's wrong with my eyes? Look, Kakashi said, pulling out a small water bottle from his training pack and pouring some water onto the smooth stone surface of a nearby meditation boulder. Naruto approached cautiously and peered at his reflection in the impromptu mirror. His breath caught in his throat. His eyes had changed. Where moments before there had been blue irises with black pupils, there were now red irises with concentric patterns of black lines. 3 comma-shaped marks circled each pupil like the face of a Sharingan. What the? Naruto breathed, reaching up to touch his own face in disbelief. How is this possible? I'm not an Uchiha. Kakashi was quiet for a long moment, studying Naruto with an intensity that made the young ninja deeply uncomfortable. The Jonin's hand slowly moved toward his own eyes, and when he pulled back the bandage that covered his left eye, it revealed his own Sharingan, the one he received from a fallen teammate years ago. Look at me, Kakashi commanded gently. Naruto turned to face his teacher. The two locked eyes, Sharingan to Sharingan. But there was something fundamentally different about them. Kakashi's eye was a gift, a transplant from someone else, bearing their patterns and their heritage. Naruto's eyes, however, seemed to pulse with a living energy. They didn't feel foreign or grafted onto his body. They felt like they belonged to him, as if they'd always been there, simply waiting for the right catalyst to awaken. This shouldn't be possible, Kakashi murmured, more to himself than to Naruto. Kekkei Genkai are determined at birth. Their genetic traits pass down through bloodlines. You don't just develop them. Well, apparently I do, Naruto said, though the wonder in his voice was tempered by growing concern. What does this mean? Am I an Uchiha? Did I somehow inherit something from my parents that... But even as the words left his mouth, Naruto knew they didn't make sense. The third Hokage had told him basic facts about his parents, his father Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, and his mother Kushina Uzumaki. Neither of them had been Uchiha. Neither bloodline carried the Sharingan. We need to return to the village, Kakashi decided, his tone leaving no room for argument. This is beyond my understanding, Naruto. We need to report this to the Hokage immediately. As they began walking back toward Konoha's residential areas, Naruto found himself constantly distracted by his new Sharingan. Every few seconds he had to resist the urge to check his reflection in any available surface. The power he felt thrumming through his body was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. He tried to understand what had happened. The lightning chakra and the Ninetales response. That much made sense. When he pushed himself hard enough, the beast's energy sometimes surged forward. But why had it manifested as a Sharingan? What mechanism could possibly allow him to develop a bloodline limit? These questions consumed his thoughts as they navigated the tree-lined paths toward the village proper. Kakashi remained unusually quiet, his mind clearly working through possibilities. Occasionally, Naruto caught his teacher glancing at him, as if Kakashi was still trying to process what he was seeing. They arrived at the Hokage Tower to find it bustling with administrative activity. Clerks and chunin moved through the halls with purposeful strides, carrying reports and mission briefings. Kakashi led Naruto directly to the Hokage's office, bypassing the normal waiting procedures by virtue of his Jonin status. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, was seated behind his enormous desk, reviewing documents with the patience of a man who'd held this position for decades. The elderly ninja looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from administrative focus to immediate concern. Kakashi, the Hokage greeted. Naruto. This is unusual. You rarely visit without prior appointment. His dark eyes, still sharp despite his age, assessed them both. Then his gaze fixed on Naruto's face, and his entire body went rigid. Naruto, the Hokage said slowly, close your eyes. Naruto obeyed, and when he opened them again, the Hokage's expression was even more grave than before. How long has he manifested this? Sarutobi asked Kakashi, abandoning pleasantries. Less than an hour, Kakashi replied. It appeared suddenly during taijutsu training. I witnessed the activation, but I have no explanation for its origin. The third Hokage stood from his desk with surprising speed for his age and approached Naruto, bending down slightly to examine his eyes more closely. His chakra began to circulate around him, not threatening, but analytical. Naruto felt the pressure against his mind as the Hokage used some kind of sensory technique to probe the nature of his new ability. After nearly a minute, Sarutobi stepped back, stroking his beard thoughtfully. Fascinating, the elderly ninja murmured. And deeply troubling. He returned to his desk and pressed a button. Within moments, a younger clerk appeared. Summon Jiraiya immediately. Tell him it's about the Uzumaki boy and something remarkable has occurred. Also, send word to the medical corps that I need Tsunade's expertise. She may still be in the village. Kakashi stepped forward slightly. Old man, do you have any theories about what might have caused this? In all my experience with the Sharingan, I've never encountered such a manifestation. Because it shouldn't happen, Sarutobi replied, settling back into his chair. Kekkei Genkai bloodline limits are the product of unique combinations of chakra types that develop in utero. They're genetic, determined before birth, and cannot be awakened in someone who doesn't naturally possess them. He paused, his gaze returning to Naruto. And yet, it's happened. Which suggests one of a few possibilities. The Hokage held up one finger. First, that Naruto has always possessed the Sharingan genetics, but they were somehow suppressed or dormant. His parents' histories would need to be re-examined to see if there was any hidden Uchiha ancestry. A second finger joined the first. Second, that the Nine-Tails' presence in his body has somehow altered his genetic structure or awakened latent bloodline capabilities. This seems unlikely but not impossible. The beast's chakra is vast and fundamentally different from human chakra. Finally, a third finger. Third, that something about the combination of his training today, the lightning jutsu, his own chakra manipulation, and the Nine-Tails' response, triggered some new and unknown phenomenon. The least likely possibility, but also the most intriguing. Naruto listened to all this with growing confusion. So, am I an Uchiha or not? What does this mean for me? It means, the Hokage said gently, that we need to understand precisely what you are before we make any declarations to the village. The Uchiha clan in particular will be very interested in anyone claiming Sharingan capabilities. The Hyuga clan would likewise be interested if your abilities extend beyond simple copying. Which they might. Copying? Naruto asked. Kakashi responded, the Sharingan's primary ability is the capacity to see and copy jutsu. It allows the user to analyze movements, understand hand seals, and replicate techniques they observe. That's likely what occurred when you were attempting to learn my lightning variation. As if on cue, Naruto's new eyes suddenly began to burn. He gasped and pressed his hands against his face. But the sensation wasn't painful. It was more like his eyes were crying out for something. What's happening? Naruto managed to ask. Keep them open, Sarutobi commanded. Don't suppress the sensation. Naruto forced his hands away from his face and opened his eyes fully. The burning sensation intensified, and with it came a strange vision. He could suddenly see the flow of chakra in the room around him, visible threads of energy moving through Kakashi's body, through the Hokage, even through the furniture and the stone walls themselves. Then, in his mind's eye, he saw the hand seals Kakashi had performed earlier. The memory was impossibly clear, as if recorded by a perfect camera. He saw the sequence of movements, the exact moment the lightning chakra was released, the precise way it had been molded. The vision faded, leaving Naruto breathless. Remarkable, Sarutobi whispered. Your Sharingan is fully functional from the moment of awakening. Most Uchiha require years of training to develop such clarity. Is this bad? Naruto asked. It's unprecedented, the Hokage replied. Which makes it inherently unpredictable. Kakashi, you'll need to intensify his training in Sharingan techniques and control. We cannot have him manifesting a bloodline limit he doesn't understand. Understood, Kakashi said. Though I should mention that he seemed to lose control of the manifestation briefly. The ability flickered and dimmed. Stamina, Sarutobi noted. Using bloodline limits drains substantial chakra. Naruto, I want you to begin meditation training immediately. You need to understand the precise sensation of this awakening and learn to activate and deactivate it at will. Otherwise, you risk exhaustion at critical moments in combat. There was a knock at the door, and Jiraiya entered without waiting for permission. The white-haired sage was one of the legendary Sannin, and he wore the confidence of someone who'd faced down gods and survived. His eyes swept across the room and landed on Naruto, and Naruto saw the exact moment recognition dawned on the sage's face. The boy has awakened something, Jiraiya said. It wasn't a question. His Sharingan, the Hokage confirmed. Moments ago during training, Kakashi witnessed the manifestation. Jiraiya whistled low, approaching Naruto and tilting the boy's chin up to examine his eyes. Well, I'll be damned. When did the Nine-Tails gain bloodline capabilities? That's what we're attempting to determine, Sarutobi said. I want you to research this, Jiraiya. Look into ancient texts, sealed archives, anything that might explain how Naruto could access a Kekkei Genkai. Jiraiya nodded, though his expression suggested he believed the task would likely prove futile. This changes everything, you know. If the boy can access bloodline limits, he trailed off, but the implication hung in the air. The political ramifications alone would be staggering. Bloodline limits were what defined the great ninja clans. The Uchiha's power came from their Sharingan, the Hyugas from their Byakugan. If an outsider, worse, a Jinchuriki, could access these abilities, the entire hierarchy of ninja society would be thrown into question. This information stays within the inner circle, Sarutobi instructed sternly. Naruto, Kakashi, Jiraiya, and myself for now. Once we understand what's happening, we'll make a more informed decision about disclosure. Agreed? Naruto nodded, though the idea of keeping such a significant development secret made him uneasy. He'd spent his entire life being kept in the dark about his status as a Jinchuriki. The idea of navigating another secret felt suffocating. The following week was perhaps the most intense of Naruto's life thus far. His training with Kakashi doubled then tripled. Every day began before dawn with meditation, learning to sense the exact moment his Sharingan would activate, and practicing the precise control necessary to deactivate it at will. The first few days were maddening. His eyes would activate randomly, draining his chakra without warning. He'd be in the middle of a conversation with Sakura at lunch, and suddenly his vision would shift to the Sharingan perspective, leaving him disoriented and exhausted. By evening of the first day, he'd collapsed twice from chakra depletion. Kakashi explained that this was normal for someone newly awakening a bloodline limit. The body needed time to adjust to the new demands being placed on it. The chakra pathways required conditioning, just like muscles required physical training. Naruto's natural reserves of chakra, a gift of his Jinchuriki nature, actually worked in his favor here. It meant he could practice far longer than a normal ninja could, pushing his control further before his reserves ran dry. By the third day, he'd achieved basic stability. He could now keep his Sharingan active for nearly 20 minutes before the drain became critical. By the fifth day, he could switch between his normal eyes and his Sharingan eyes almost as easily as blinking. The real training, though, came when Kakashi began teaching him Sharingan techniques in earnest. The primary use of the Sharingan is observation, Kakashi explained during one training session. They were in an isolated location, far from the village proper, where Naruto could practice without fear of being observed. You analyze your opponent's movements and predict their next actions. This allows you to avoid attacks and position yourself optimally for counter moves. Kakashi demonstrated by moving through a series of strikes and kicks, forcing Naruto to track each movement with his Sharingan. At first, Naruto could barely keep up. Even with the enhanced perception the Sharingan provided, Kakashi was simply too fast, too experienced. Again, Kakashi would say, and Naruto would try once more. By the third week of training, something clicked. Naruto began to see not just the movements but the intention behind them. He could predict where Kakashi's next strike would come from, could adjust his position before the attack was even fully committed. It was a fundamental shift in how he approached combat, transforming him from a reactive fighter into something approaching a proactive one. You're learning, Kakashi observed, allowing Naruto to land a block strike. You're beginning to see beyond the obvious. Good. They also began training in jutsu copying. Kakashi would perform various techniques, and Naruto would use his Sharingan to analyze them, then attempt to replicate them. Some jutsu were beyond his current chakra control, complex wind techniques and highly refined lightning variations. But simpler techniques came relatively easily to him once he understood the basic architecture. By the end of the third week, Naruto could copy Kakashi's basic lightning jutsu with reasonable accuracy. The reproduction wasn't perfect. Kakashi's had far more control and precision, but it was a functional recreation. Never lose sight of an important truth, Kakashi cautioned during one of these practice sessions. Copying a jutsu and truly mastering it are two different things. You can replicate the hand seals and the chakra manipulation, but true mastery comes only through practice and understanding. Don't become overconfident simply because you can see something with the Sharingan. Naruto nodded seriously. The Sharingan had been a revelation, but he was beginning to understand its limitations as well as its powers. It was a tool, powerful but not a replacement for training and discipline. However, as March progressed toward April and the Chunin exams drew closer, Naruto began to notice something deeply troubling. His Sharingan wasn't stable. Some days, his eyes would manifest a brilliant crimson color, the tomo spinning with perfect clarity. Other days they seemed to flicker, losing color momentarily before brightening again. The sensation was deeply unsettling, like holding your breath and feeling your lungs demand oxygen. He reported these incidents to Kakashi, who consulted with the third Hokage. The answer they received was both reassuring and concerning. The instability was normal for a newly awakened bloodline limit, but it would gradually stabilize as Naruto's body fully adapted to the power. However, there was a risk. If Naruto pushed too hard before the full adaptation was complete, he could cause permanent damage to his eyes. This revelation came to Naruto during a private meeting with the Hokage, just him and Sarutobi in the office. "Your body is extraordinary, Naruto," the Hokage explained. "The Nine Tails chakra has enhanced your physical capabilities in ways normal ninja cannot match. But even you have limits. The Sharingan activation is straining your system in ways we don't fully understand yet. Jiraiya's research has turned up some interesting theories, but nothing conclusive." "What kind of theories?" Naruto asked. "The possibility that the Nine Tails themselves once possessed multiple bloodline limits," Sarutobi said thoughtfully. "Beast and man are different, of course, but the Nine Tails is no ordinary creature. It's possible that sealed within you is not just chakra but also genetic memory or inherited traits. The Sharingan might be the first manifestation of a larger potential." The idea was staggering. Did that mean Naruto could access other bloodline limits? Could he somehow inherit the Hyuga's Byakugan, the Uchiha's different abilities, perhaps even more exotic powers from clans he'd never even heard of? "We don't know," the Hokage said, as if reading Naruto's mind. "Which is why, for now, we focus on stabilizing what you have. You'll continue your training with Kakashi. Jiraiya will begin working with you once he returns to the village. His expertise in sealing and chakra theory might provide insights we otherwise wouldn't have." "And Naruto?" The Hokage paused, his aged eyes meeting Naruto's directly. "Keep this hidden. From everyone. Your teammates, your friends, the village at large. If people learn that you can access bloodline limits, it will cause problems we don't need to face right now." It was during one of his evening training sessions, nearly a month after the initial awakening, that Naruto encountered something unexpected. He was training in a remote area of the village's training grounds, working on his Sharingan stability. His assignment for the day was simple: keep the Sharingan active for as long as possible without draining his entire chakra reserve. It was tedious work, no combat, no jutsu practice, just maintaining the state of activation. His eyes burned from the effort, and sweat dripped down his temples, but he pressed on. 30 minutes. 35. 38. Then his Sharingan flickered. Not the normal flicker of instability, but something more violent. A sudden surge of chakra erupted from within his body, not his own chakra, but the Nine Tails' energy, responding to something. Naruto's entire body convulsed as the beast's power flooded through him. "No, no, no!" Naruto gasped, struggling for control. The Nine Tails' chakra was usually docile, restricted within its seal, but sometimes when Naruto pushed too hard, it would struggle against the bonds holding it. This felt different, though. This felt like the Nine Tails was actively trying to achieve something. His Sharingan blazed with unprecedented intensity. The pattern changed. Instead of the 3 tomo that had appeared before, the eye suddenly showed 6 tomo arranged in a more complex pattern. The power flowing through him was immense, almost overwhelming. That's when Naruto felt it. A presence in the village. Vast. Terrible. Ancient. And directly locked onto him. Naruto's eyes went wide as he felt the presence turning toward him like a predator sensing prey. For a moment, he could sense what it was, a chakra so immense it dwarfed everything around it. A presence that wasn't entirely human. Then the Nine Tails snarled inside him, and the connection broke. Naruto collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. His Sharingan deactivated abruptly, leaving his eyes returning to their normal blue state. His entire body shook with exhaustion and residual energy. "What the hell was that?" he whispered to himself. But before he could contemplate an answer, Kakashi appeared from the trees, his Sharingan already visible. "Naruto!" Kakashi called out, running toward him. "What happened?" "I felt something," Naruto gasped. "Something felt me. I don't know what it was, but it was huge and it." "The village," Kakashi said, helping Naruto to his feet. "We need to get you back to the village. The Hokage needs to know about this." As they made their way back through the darkening forest, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. The presence had been terrifying, far more powerful than anything he'd encountered before. And somehow, he knew with absolute certainty that it had noticed him, had taken an interest. The nine tails shifted uneasily within his seal, and Naruto sensed something from the beast that he'd rarely perceived before: fear. By the time they arrived at the Hokage Tower, night had fully fallen. The third Hokage was still working. He was always working, it seemed, and he immediately dismissed his staff when Kakashi arrived with Naruto. "Tell me everything," Sarutobi commanded. Naruto described the surge of chakra, the change in his Sharingan, the presence he'd felt. The Hokage's expression grew increasingly grave as the story continued. "A presence?" Sarutobi asked. "Could you determine its location?" "No," Naruto replied. "It was moving. At least I think it was. It felt far away initially, then suddenly closer, and then, it was gone. Like it was responding to me." Jiraiya, who'd materialized in the room with the practiced silence of an elite ninja, whistled low. "If something that powerful is moving toward Konoha, that's a serious problem, which is exactly why we need to understand what Naruto's awakening means," the Hokage said. He turned to Jiraiya. "Your research, have you found anything?" Jiraiya pulled out a worn scroll from his pocket and spread it across the Hokage's desk. "Some theories. Nothing conclusive. But there are old texts that mention something called the Mirror of All Paths, supposedly a legendary ability that allowed certain individuals to mirror and absorb the abilities of others. The texts are contradictory, written in archaic language, but if even half of what they suggest is true..." He trailed off, letting the implication hang. "Naruto could be capable of far more than we've theorized," Sarutobi finished. The Hokage stood and approached Naruto, placing a gnarled hand on the boy's shoulder. "This is bigger than the Chunin exams now. Bigger than your training. Whatever you've awakened, it's drawn attention, dangerous attention." "So what do I do?" Naruto asked, fear creeping into his voice despite his efforts to remain calm. "You continue your training," Sarutobi said firmly. "You master the Sharingan. You work with Kakashi and Jiraiya to understand your awakening, and you prepare yourself for the possibility that whoever or whatever that presence was, they may come looking for you." That night, as Naruto sat alone in his apartment trying to process everything that had happened, he looked at himself in the mirror. His eyes were their normal blue color, but he could feel the Sharingan lurking beneath the surface, waiting. Like a second heart beating in his chest, like a second set of senses ready to open at his command. He thought back to when he was a child, alone and despised by the village, dreaming of becoming strong enough to be acknowledged. The dream had driven him for years, pushed him through countless trials and rejections. Now he had power beyond what he'd ever imagined. The ability to copy bloodline limits, to access techniques that should be impossible for him to use. Power that made even his teachers cautious. But with that power came questions he couldn't answer. What was he becoming? Was he still Naruto Uzumaki, or was he becoming something else entirely? The nine tails growled softly within him, sensing his turbulent emotions. For a moment, Naruto reached out with his mind toward the beast, searching for answers. "What was that thing?" he asked, not expecting a response. For the first time in years, the nine tails answered. The voice was ancient and rough, but clear. "That was no thing, boy. That was a god noticing your existence. And gods are always hungry." Naruto's blood ran cold. "What does it want?" he asked. "What all gods want," the nine tails replied. "To see if you're worth destroying or worth ruling." As dawn broke over Konoha, Naruto made a decision. He would master this power. He would understand it, control it, and make sure that whatever was out there, whatever had noticed him in the darkness, would never find him unprepared. The journey had only just begun. The morning after the incident at the training grounds, Naruto woke to find himself confined to a small room within the Hokage Tower's medical wing. It wasn't a prison exactly, but the presence of ANBU guards stationed outside the door made the distinction academic. The third Hokage had decided, after hearing the full account of the previous night's events, that Naruto needed to be under closer observation until they understood what was happening to him. Naruto sat on the edge of the hospital bed, staring at his hands. They looked normal, unremarkable even. But beneath the skin, beneath the surface of who he was, something profound had changed. He could feel the Sharingan's presence constantly now, a subtle pressure behind his eyes, waiting to be released. There was a knock at the door, and Kakashi entered without waiting for permission. The Jonin was carrying a stack of scrolls and a grim expression that suggested he'd been awake for far longer than Naruto had. "How are you feeling?" Kakashi asked, settling into the chair beside the bed with the ease of someone who'd conducted countless similar conversations. "Like a prisoner," Naruto replied, not bothering to hide his frustration. "Why am I locked up?" "I didn't do anything wrong." "The village doesn't know that," Kakashi said simply. "As far as the official record is concerned, you're here for a routine medical examination. In reality, the Hokage is trying to prevent panic. If word got out that a Jinchuriki has suddenly awakened a bloodline limit, rumors would spread like wildfire. The last thing Konoha needs right now is civil unrest." Naruto understood the logic, even if he didn't like it. The revelation of him being a Jinchuriki had been a shock to the village years ago. Some of the older ninjas still harbored resentment, still viewed him as a threat despite everything he'd done. If they learned that he now possessed the Sharingan, the most revered ability of the Uchiha clan, the backlash could be severe. "The Hokage wants to see you after you've eaten breakfast," Kakashi continued. "He's arranged for Jiraiya to be present as well. We need to discuss what happened last night, and establish a training regimen that won't result in another incident." "It wasn't my fault," Naruto protested. "My chakra just surged." The Nine-Tails was reacting to something. "I know," Kakashi said, his single visible eye crinkling slightly. "Which is precisely why we need to develop better control. A bloodline limit is powerful, but an uncontrolled bloodline limit is dangerous. To yourself and everyone around you." After Kakashi left, an orderly brought breakfast. Naruto ate mechanically, his mind elsewhere. The presence he'd felt last night haunted him. It had been so vast, so undeniably powerful. The Nine-Tails, a being of immense strength and terrifying chakra, had seemed almost afraid of it. That more than anything else conveyed the magnitude of what he'd encountered. By mid-morning, Naruto was escorted to the Hokage's office by Kakashi. The journey through the tower's corridors felt surreal. Inbu watched their passage from the shadows, not threatening, but vigilant. Naruto was beginning to understand that his awakening had elevated him to a different level of concern within the village's hierarchy. He was no longer just a troublemaking student, or even a promising young ninja. He was a variable, a piece on the board that needed to be carefully managed. The Hokage's office was arranged much as it always was, except this time the great desk had been cleared of most of its usual administrative clutter. Several maps were spread across its surface, alongside various sealed scrolls and what appeared to be ancient texts. Jiraiya was already present, his white hair looking even more unkempt than usual, suggesting he'd been working through the night. "Naruto," the Hokage greeted, gesturing for him to approach. "Thank you for coming. I know this situation is confusing and likely frightening. I want to address your concerns directly." Naruto appreciated the Hokage's straightforward approach. "What was that thing I felt last night?" The Nine-Tails was afraid of it. "I could sense that." Jiraiya and the Hokage exchanged a glance before Sarutobi replied, "We're not entirely certain. However, based on the description of the presence, the immense chakra, the predatory attention, we have some theories." The Hokage walked over to one of the maps, pointing to a location in the far north. "There are rumors of an organization operating outside the boundaries of established villages. They call themselves the Akatsuki. Very little is known about them, but the intelligence we've gathered suggests they possess individuals with extraordinary power. Individuals who hunt Jinchuriki." Naruto's stomach dropped. "They hunt Jinchuriki? Why?" "That," Jiraiya said grimly, "is one of the great mysteries. Jinchuriki are powerful assets to their villages, but there's a coordinated effort across multiple organizations to eliminate, or capture them. We've been investigating for years without conclusive answers. The more immediate concern," the Hokage continued, "is that the presence you sensed last night might have been an Akatsuki member. If they've located you, that represents a significant threat. But they're far away," Naruto said, trying to convince himself. "The presence moved away eventually, didn't it?" "It did," Kakashi confirmed. "But that doesn't mean it won't return. Which is why the Hokage has made a decision regarding your training." Sarutobi returned to his desk and folded his hands before him. Naruto, we need you to become stronger. Much stronger. The Chunin exams are still approaching, and you'll be participating in them as planned. However, starting immediately, your training will intensify significantly. How much more intense? Naruto asked warily. Substantially, Jiraiya answered, stepping forward. The boy needs to master multiple techniques and learn to control his awakened abilities. I can accelerate his training in ways Kakashi can't, given my own expertise. I propose splitting his training time between us. Kakashi nodded in agreement. Jiraiya will work with you on chakra theory and broader jutsu mastery. I'll focus on Sharingan control and refining your combat abilities. This will be demanding, the Hokage warned. There will be times when you feel like you can't continue, when the training pushes you beyond what you thought were your limits. You must push through, not to the point of permanent damage, but you need to grow significantly and quickly. Naruto understood what was being asked of him. This wasn't just about becoming a better ninja or passing the Chunin exams. This was about survival. If the Akatsuki or other forces were hunting him, he needed to be strong enough to survive that hunt. I'll do it, Naruto said firmly. I'll train as hard as I need to. The Hokage smiled slightly, a sign of his satisfaction. Good. Beginning tomorrow, you'll be excused from most normal duties. Your entire focus will be on training. Kakashi will arrange your schedule. Jiraiya, you'll begin your work as soon as possible. Jiraiya cracked his knuckles, a gleam entering his eye. The boy's going to earn every ounce of strength he gains. No easy days. The next week was perhaps the most exhausting of Naruto's life. He thought his previous training with Kakashi was intense, but it paled in comparison to what now awaited him. Mornings belonged to Kakashi. They trained exclusively on Sharingan control and combat applications. Kakashi had developed a systematic approach, breaking down the multifaceted aspects of the Sharingan's abilities and addressing each one individually. The Sharingan has several distinct functions, Kakashi explained during one session. First, the ability to see chakra and follow high-speed movements. Second, the capacity to copy jutsu through observation. Third, certain advanced abilities that only experienced users can access. For now, we focus on perfecting the first two. They began each morning with perception training. Kakashi would move through intricate patterns at various speeds, and Naruto had to track every movement, predict the next action, and articulate what he'd observed. At first, even with the Sharingan's enhanced perception, it was nearly impossible to keep up. Kakashi moved with the grace of a master, and the speed that came from decades of experience. But Naruto was learning quickly. By the third day, he could track Kakashi's movements at moderate speed with nearly perfect accuracy. By the fifth day, he was beginning to predict attacks before they were committed. The Sharingan wasn't just allowing him to see faster, it was training his mind to process information more quickly, to recognize patterns in movement and chakra flow that would have been invisible without the bloodline limit. Better, Kakashi observed after Naruto successfully defended against 7 consecutive attacks. You're beginning to understand the principle. The Sharingan is an enhancement of your natural perception, but only if you train your mind to use it effectively. Don't simply look at your opponent, see them. Understand their rhythm, their tendencies, their weaknesses. The afternoons and early evenings belonged to Jiraiya. The legendary sage had taken over a remote section of the training grounds, and his methods were radically different from Kakashi's methodical approach. Jiraiya believed in pushing Naruto to his absolute limits, forcing him to adapt, and overcome or fail. Chakra control, Jiraiya explained during their first session, is the foundation of all ninjutsu. You've always had exceptional reserves thanks to your tenet, but you lack refinement. That ends now. He had Naruto perform a series of increasingly complex exercises. First, gathering chakra into his palm and maintaining it in a stable sphere. Then, creating shapes, cubes, pyramids, intricate geometric patterns. When Naruto could do that, Jiraiya moved on to elemental control. Try to create a flame in your hand, Jiraiya instructed. Not fire jutsu, just pure flame, using only your chakra. Naruto tried. He concentrated, pushing fire-aligned chakra into his palm. The result was a small spark, quickly extinguished. On his 100th attempt, he managed a small flame that lasted for 3 seconds before dissipating. Better, Jiraiya said. Again. Do it 1,000 more times, and you'll have begun to understand the principle. By the end of the first week, Naruto was so exhausted that he could barely move. His muscles ached, his chakra reserves were constantly depleted, and his mind felt foggy from the constant mental strain. He collapsed into sleep each night within minutes of hitting his bed, too tired even to eat a proper dinner. But he was improving. Visibly, measurably improving. In the second week, Jiraiya shifted his focus to jutsu diversity. You need to expand your arsenal beyond the basic techniques you've learned, the sage explained. More jutsu means more options in combat. More options mean better survival chances. Jiraiya taught him wind-based techniques, expanding on the basics Naruto had learned in the academy. He showed him how to create wind blades, how to accelerate his movement with wind currents, and how to detect incoming attacks through subtle shifts in air pressure. Your natural affinity is wind and water, Jiraiya explained. With your massive chakra reserves, you can also use fire and earth, but wind is where you'll find the most natural expression of your power. Focus there, master it, then expand to other elements. Concurrently, Kakashi began teaching him to copy jutsu more deliberately. The advantage of the Sharingan, Kakashi said, is that you can learn techniques by observing them. However, mere observation isn't enough. You must understand the underlying principles. Why does this hand seal sequence work? What does each seal contribute to the final technique? Only by understanding these principles can you truly master a copied jutsu. To this end, Kakashi would perform jutsu slowly, breaking them down into component parts. He'd hold hand seals longer than necessary, allowing Naruto time to study them. He'd explain the chakra flow, the precise molding required, and the moment of release. Then he'd have Naruto replicate the entire process. By the end of the second week, Naruto could copy 3 of Kakashi's signature techniques: a basic lightning jutsu, a wind-cutting technique, and a water displacement maneuver. None of them matched Kakashi's precision or power, but they were functional reproductions. You're learning quickly, Kakashi observed one evening as they walked back toward the village. Your Sharingan is naturally suited to copying. Most Uchiha require years to develop this level of proficiency. You're achieving it in weeks. Because I have you teaching me, Naruto replied. And because I'm desperate to understand this power. Don't discount your natural ability, Kakashi said. Or your determination. Those matter more than any bloodline limit ever could. During the third week, something remarkable happened. Naruto was practicing alone, working on one of Kakashi's techniques, when his Sharingan activated on its own, not in response to danger or consciously directed activation, but simply as he concentrated on the jutsu sequence. The eyes manifested naturally, almost as if they'd been waiting for this moment. He performed the technique perfectly. The lightning-infused strike hit the training post with considerably more force than his previous attempts. The post splintered, bark exploding outward in a spray of wooden fragments. Naruto stood there, breathing hard, his Sharingan still active and burning with intensity. For the first time since the initial awakening, he felt truly comfortable using the power. It wasn't alien or forced. It was simply, there, an extension of himself. That evening, he reported the development to both Kakashi and Jiraiya during a rare joint training session. The integration is accelerating, Jiraiya noted thoughtfully. The Sharingan is becoming less a foreign ability and more a natural component of his combat expression. That's excellent progress. His chakra control has also improved substantially, Kakashi added. I've noticed his jutsu are executing with better efficiency. Less wasted energy, more focused power. Sarutobi, who'd been observing from the shadows with the patience of someone accustomed to waiting, stepped forward. Gentlemen, I think we can say that Naruto is progressing beyond our initial expectations. How much longer until he's ready to participate in the Chunin exams? He's ready now, Kakashi said. He won't be at peak performance, but he's beyond adequately prepared. I agree, Jiraiya said. Though I recommend we continue intensive training even during the exams themselves. The stress of combat will accelerate his adaptation further. The Hokage nodded, satisfied. Then we proceed as planned. Naruto, you'll participate in the Chunin exams with Team 7. However, I want you to exercise caution. Don't reveal your Sharingan to other participants unless absolutely necessary. A bloodline limit manifestation would draw far too much attention. I'll keep it hidden, Naruto promised, understanding the wisdom of the restriction. As word began to spread through the village that participants from other hidden villages were arriving for the Chunin exams, Naruto found himself in an increasingly difficult position. He was training at a level beyond what his teammates knew, developing abilities he couldn't reveal. It created a gap between him and Sakura and Sasuke that went beyond simple power differential. One evening, about a week before the exams were scheduled to begin, Sasuke confronted him. Naruto had been heading back from one of his training sessions with Jiraiya, still sweating and covered in dirt, when he encountered the Uchiha prodigy waiting on a rooftop overlooking the training grounds. Sasuke's expression was carefully neutral, but there was tension in his posture. "Your chakra is different," Sasuke said without preamble. Naruto's heart rate spiked, but he forced himself to remain calm. "What are you talking about? Don't play dumb," Sasuke commanded. "I've noticed for weeks now. Your chakra signature has changed. It's become more refined, more controlled. And there's something else, something I can't quite identify." "I've just been training harder," Naruto replied, keeping his tone carefully level. "Same as you, I'd imagine." Sasuke's eyes narrowed. "You've been training with Kakashi, but I've seen you working with Jiraiya as well. And there are NBU near your residence at night. Something's going on, and you're not telling me about it." Naruto couldn't deny that something was happening, but he couldn't reveal what it was. The Hokage had been explicit about that. "I'm just trying to get stronger. For the Chunin exams." "By lying to your team?" Sasuke's voice carried an edge of accusation. "We're supposed to trust each other. We're supposed to be a cohesive unit, and we are," Naruto said. "Nothing's changed between us." But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were false. Everything had changed. Naruto now possessed abilities that Sasuke, for all his Uchiha pride and natural talent, didn't have. The power dynamic between them had shifted in ways Sasuke likely suspected but couldn't confirm. "Something's wrong," Sasuke said quietly. "I just don't know what. But I swear, if you're keeping secrets that could affect the team's performance, we're going to have a serious problem." After Sasuke left, Naruto sat alone on the rooftop for a long time, troubled by the interaction. Keeping secrets from his teammates was necessary, but it also felt wrong in a fundamental way. He'd always been the kind of person to be transparent, to speak his mind. This deception, even for good reasons, sat uneasily in his chest. He mentioned the encounter to Kakashi during their next training session. "Sasuke suspects something," Naruto admitted. "He's smart enough to notice the changes even if he doesn't understand what's causing them." Kakashi was silent for a moment, considering. "This was always going to be a complication. Your teammates will eventually learn about your awakening, but not yet. For now, we manage the situation as best we can. If Sasuke presses further, refer him to the Hokage. It's not a lie, it's simply deflection." "I don't like lying to him," Naruto said. "Neither do I," Kakashi replied. "But there are situations where discretion is more important than transparency. This is one of them." During the final week before the Chunin exams, Naruto's training reached a new intensity. Both Kakashi and Jiraiya seemed to sense that they had limited time to push him forward, and they took full advantage. Jiraiya introduced him to summoning jutsu, teaching him how to form contracts with toads and channel their power. The first summon left Naruto's entire body aching, the chakra expenditure far greater than he'd anticipated. But once he understood the principle, subsequent summoning became easier. "Summoning is a jutsu of leverage," Jiraiya explained. "You're not creating the creature's power from your own chakra, you're channeling it from another plane of existence. In some ways, it's more efficient than creating power entirely from your own reserves. Practice it more, and you'll develop your signature summons." Kakashi, meanwhile, pushed Naruto's taijutsu to new levels. "Combat is rarely fought with jutsu alone," Kakashi reminded him. "Hand-to-hand skill is equally important. Your Sharingan can give you the edge in perception, but you need the physical capability to capitalize on that advantage." They worked on footwork, striking combinations, defensive forms, and grappling techniques. Kakashi was relentless, pushing Naruto until he could barely stand, then making him practice sequences until perfection became second nature. By the time the Chunin exams were ready to begin, Naruto felt transformed. He was still the same person fundamentally, but he'd been remade into something more, stronger, faster, more capable. And beneath the surface, a Sharingan waited to be unleashed. The night before the exams, Naruto stood alone in the courtyard of the Hokage Tower. The Hokage himself stepped out to join him, the two of them looking up at the stars in companionable silence. "Are you ready?" the Hokage asked finally. "I think so," Naruto replied. "Though I'm nervous about keeping the Sharingan hidden during the actual exams. If I get into serious combat, you'll manage," the Hokage assured him. "You're stronger than you realize, Naruto. The awakening of your bloodline limit is significant, but it's not the only source of your power. Your determination, your adaptability, your refusal to accept defeat, these are the qualities that will carry you through." "What if someone from the other villages recognizes the Sharingan?" Naruto asked. "There are ninja who have studied bloodline limits extensively. Then we deal with that complication if it arises," Sarutobi said. "For now, focus on the exams. Perform well, show your growth, and don't needlessly expose yourself. That's all I ask." After the Hokage left, Naruto remained in the courtyard, thinking about everything that had happened in the past month. A month ago, he'd been a relatively normal genin, training to improve his standing and prove himself to the village. Now he was something else entirely, something undefined and potentially dangerous. He raised his hand, concentrating on his palm. After a moment, fire appeared there, just a small flame, not the product of any jutsu but pure chakra manipulation. He'd been practicing this with Jiraiya, learning to create flame without hand seals or formal technique. The flame danced in his palm, warm and alive. Naruto watched it carefully, understanding that this small manifestation represented something enormous. He could copy bloodline limits. He could access abilities that should be impossible for him to reach. The implications were staggering, and the responsibility was almost crushing. But he would master it. He would understand it. And when the time came to protect those he cared about, he would be ready. The night before the Chunin exams officially began, all the participating genin from the various hidden villages were gathered in the Chunin exam headquarters for an orientation session. Naruto stood with Sasuke and Sakura, watching as representatives from the other villages filed in. There were participants from the Hidden Sand Village, the Hidden Cloud Village, the Hidden Mist Village, and several smaller nations as well. Naruto felt their eyes on him and his team, sizing them up, assessing potential threats and opportunities. Sasuke stood with his characteristic arrogance, seemingly unbothered by the scrutiny. Sakura was nervous, her hands fidgeting as she looked around at the competition. Naruto tried to present a confident exterior, but inside, he was intensely aware of every presence in the room, every potential threat. One of the Sand Village ninja drew his particular attention, a red-haired boy with an intense, unsettling aura. There was something about his chakra that felt vaguely familiar, though Naruto couldn't place why. The boy's eyes swept over Naruto for a moment, and Naruto felt the weight of his attention like a physical force. That night, back in his apartment, Naruto meditated, trying to center himself. The Sharingan waited just beneath the surface, ready to activate at his command. He'd practiced controlling it enough now that maintaining the activation for extended periods was no longer an issue. The real challenge would be controlling it in the middle of combat when adrenaline and instinct were driving his reactions. As he meditated, he reached out through the seal toward the Nine Tails. "Can you help me?" he asked the beast. "During the exams? If I need power, I'd like to be able to draw on yours without losing control." The Nine Tails' presence shifted, and for a moment, Naruto felt something like approval. "The exams are where you prove your worth, Kit," the beast rumbled. "Use what you've been given. Use what I've given you. And if you fall fighting." It wasn't quite the reassurance Naruto had hoped for, but it was more cooperation than the Nine Tails typically offered. The morning of the first exam, Naruto stood with his team in the assembled group of genin. The excitement was palpable, the nervous energy almost visible. Some participants looked terrified, others confident to the point of arrogance. Naruto tried to project calm, even as his mind raced with possibilities and concerns. An instructor stepped forward to explain the first exam, a written test of tactical knowledge, chakra theory, and ninja principles. It was designed to determine which participants had the intelligence and preparation to advance. Naruto settled into his seat, read the questions, and found himself relying on information Jiraiya had drilled into him during their training sessions. Chakra theory, the principles of various jutsu types, the expected strategic responses to different scenarios. All of it came naturally now. When the exam ended 2 hours later, Naruto felt confident about his performance. It wasn't flawless, but it was solid. "How did you do?" Sakura asked as they filed out. "Okay, I think," Naruto replied. "Not perfect, but better than I expected." "You look confident," Sasuke observed, studying Naruto with those dark Uchiha eyes. "Did Kakashi give you special preparation?" "Just normal training," Naruto replied, keeping his tone light. "Same thing you were doing with your clan, I'd imagine." The suspicion didn't leave Sasuke's eyes, but he didn't press further. That evening, the list of participants who'd passed the first exam was posted. Naruto scanned the names and felt a surge of satisfaction when he found his own. Sasuke and Sakura had also passed, along with most of the ninja from the other villages. The second exam would begin in 3 days. During those 3 days, Naruto trained moderately, giving his body time to recover from the intense preparation regimen while still maintaining his edge. Kakashi had advised against overtraining immediately before combat, noting that a rested ninja was more effective than one pushed to the absolute limit. The night before the second exam, Naruto again found himself unable to sleep. He paced his apartment, his mind churning with possibilities. The second exam was typically a test of survival. Participants placed in an environment with scarce resources and forced to compete against one another. It would be far more physically demanding than the written test, and it would be an opportunity to use his Sharingan if circumstances warranted it. Naruto ran through scenarios in his mind. If Sasuke noticed him using the bloodline limit, he'd have questions that Naruto couldn't answer, at least, not yet. If participants from other villages saw his Sharingan, they might report it, causing political complications. The Hokage had been explicit. Only use the power if absolutely necessary for survival. But if it came down to life and death, Naruto was under no illusions about what he would do. He would reveal his power, would risk the consequences, if hiding it meant dying or allowing his teammates to be killed. The weight of that knowledge sat heavily on his shoulders as he finally, sometime near dawn, managed to fall asleep. Tomorrow, the true test would begin. Tomorrow, the secrets would be tested against reality. Tomorrow, the awakening would face its first genuine trial. As sleep claimed him, Naruto's dreams were filled with burning red eyes, vast distant presences, and the certainty that his life had fundamentally changed in ways he was only beginning to comprehend. The Chunin exams awaited. And with them, the revelation of just how far Naruto's newfound power could take him. The second exam began in what was known as the Forest of Death, a sprawling, dangerous wilderness at the edge of Konoha's territory, filled with deadly creatures and treacherous terrain. The participants were divided into teams and scattered throughout the forest with a simple objective: retrieve 2 scrolls, one marked Heaven and one marked Earth, and reach the central tower before time ran out. Team 7 had drawn the Heaven scroll, which meant they needed to find a team with an Earth scroll and convince or force them to surrender it. The Hokage had explained that the exam was designed to test teamwork, tactical thinking, and survival instincts under pressure. Stay together, Kakashi had instructed before they'd been transported to their starting position. Watch each other's backs. Don't take unnecessary risks. And most importantly, complete the objective without losing anyone. Understood? They'd acknowledged their understanding, and then they were alone in the forest. For the first few hours, Team 7 moved cautiously through the dense vegetation, alert for traps and other participants. Sasuke took the lead with his Sharingan activated, able to sense disturbances in the environment that normal eyes would miss. Sakura took the middle position, her medical training making her valuable for treating injuries. Naruto brought up the rear, his enhanced senses and combat capability providing defense against threats from behind. They encountered a team from the hidden waterfall village, but after a brief confrontation, both teams decided it was more efficient to move on and avoid a prolonged conflict. The forest was vast. There were easier targets than a team actively working together. By evening of the first day, they'd still encountered no Earth scroll holder willing to surrender their scroll. They'd set up camp in the high branches of a massive tree, posting watches to alert them to approaching danger. We need to be more aggressive, Sasuke said during their discussion of strategy. We're not going to stumble across another team by accident. We need to actively hunt for them. That's dangerous, Sakura objected. The more teams we engage with, the higher the chance of someone serious getting hurt. That's the point of the exam, Sasuke replied coldly. To separate the strong from the weak. Naruto listened to the exchange without commenting. He understood both perspectives. Sasuke was right that they needed to be proactive, but Sakura was also right that unnecessary combat was risky. However, there was another issue that was beginning to concern him. His Sharingan had been active intermittently throughout the day, helping him track their movement and sense approaching threats. But it was straining him in ways normal activity shouldn't. By evening, his chakra reserves were already noticeably depleted, and they hadn't even engaged in serious combat yet. When Sasuke and Sakura were both asleep on their designated watch shifts, Naruto reached out mentally toward the Nine Tails. Something's wrong, he communicated silently. My Sharingan is draining me faster than it should. The Nine Tails' presence stirred within him, and Naruto felt something like amusement emanate from the beast. You're not using it correctly, Kit, the Nine Tails rumbled. The bloodline you've awakened was never meant to stand alone. It hungers for balance, for something to ground it. Without that balance, it consumes your chakra at an inefficient rate. What do you mean, balance? Naruto asked, frustrated. What kind of balance? You'll see, the Nine Tails replied cryptically. When the time comes, you'll understand. The response was frustratingly vague, but Naruto had learned that extracting information from the Nine Tails was rarely straightforward. The beast spoke in riddles and half-truths, forcing Naruto to figure out the underlying meaning. The next morning, as Team 7 moved deeper into the forest, Naruto tried to use his Sharingan more sparingly, activating it only when absolutely necessary. This helped conserve his chakra, though it also meant he was operating at a disadvantage tactically compared to what he could achieve with the bloodline limit fully active. Around midday, they encountered their first serious threat. A team from the Hidden Rock village emerged from the forest with coordinated movements that spoke of extensive training. The leader was a large man with earth-based jutsu capabilities, and his two companions appeared to specialize in stone manipulation techniques. You're from the Leaf Village, the rock ninja said. It wasn't a question. Hand over your scroll, and we'll let you walk away. Not happening, Sasuke replied, his hand already moving to his weapon pouch. What followed was a chaotic exchange of combat. The rock ninja used their earth techniques to create obstacles and defensive walls. Sasuke countered with his fire jutsu, his Sharingan allowing him to predict and adapt to their movements. Sakura provided support, using her enhanced strength to destroy parts of their stone constructs. Naruto fought defensively, staying back and watching for openings without revealing his full capabilities. The battle lasted nearly 15 minutes, an eternity in combat time. Eventually, the rock team, realizing they were being slowly outmaneuvered, disengaged and fled deeper into the forest. But the engagement had cost Team 7 significantly. Sakura had a deep cut along her arm that was bleeding heavily. Naruto had taken a stone projectile to his shoulder, resulting in significant bruising. And Sasuke, though less visibly injured, was breathing heavily, his chakra reserves noticeably depleted. We need to rest and treat injuries, Sakura said, examining her own wound with clinical precision. If we encounter another team in this condition, we won't survive. They found a relatively safe location and spent several hours recovering. Sakura used her medical training to treat everyone's injuries, her focus and precision remarkable for someone her age. Naruto watched her work, impressed despite his concerns about the larger situation. His teammates were capable, skilled, and dangerous, but they had no idea about his Sharingan, and that fundamental dishonesty was beginning to wear on him. That night, as Naruto took his watch shift, he meditated on his Sharingan, trying to understand what the Nine Tails had meant about balance. The bloodline limit seemed to have an appetite, a hunger for something it couldn't find within itself. But what? The answer came unexpectedly in the early morning hours. Another team approached their position with enough noise to wake all of them. Before they could fully arm themselves, a coordinated assault was already underway. Multiple projectiles came at them from different angles, forcing Team 7 to scatter. Naruto found himself separated from his teammates, facing two genin from the Hidden Mists village who specialized in water techniques. They moved with the fluidity of their element, their attacks coordinated and precise. One of them sent a wave of water crashing toward Naruto with a hand gesture, no jutsu needed. Naruto rolled to the side, but the water followed, responding to subtle manipulations of chakra. In desperation, Naruto activated his Sharingan fully. Immediately, his Sharingan's hunger intensified, a burning sensation that demanded satisfaction. The mist ninja in front of him, the one manipulating the water, had a visible flow of chakra, visible to Naruto's Sharingan's sight. And as Naruto watched, he began to understand the structure of that chakra flow, the way it was being modulated to control the water. Then something extraordinary happened. Naruto's eyes shifted. The crimson red of his Sharingan remained, but the tomo pattern changed, becoming more complex and intricate. Suddenly his perspective expanded exponentially. He could see not just the mist ninja's chakra, but the minute pressure points on their body, the exact locations of their tenketsu points. He could see in perfect 360-degree vision, with no blind spots. The Byakugan's white eyes manifested within the Sharingan's red pupils. Naruto's breath caught as his dual bloodline sight took in the full scope of the situation. The two mist ninja were suddenly transparent to him, their physical structures and chakra pathways laid bare. Their water techniques became predictable, even elementary, with his new perception. What? One of the mist ninja began, but Naruto was already moving. With Byakugan's sight guiding his strikes, he targeted pressure points with devastating accuracy. A strike to one ninja's arm disrupted their chakra control, causing the water manipulation to fail. A spinning kick connected with the other ninja's leg, hitting a tenketsu point and causing temporary paralysis. Within moments, the mist ninja were retreating, injured and demoralized. Naruto stood there, breathing hard, his dual vision still active. The sensation was overwhelming. He could see everything, perceive everything, understand everything. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. He forced his eyes to return to normal, the dual vision fading. The exhaustion that followed was immediate and crushing. Naruto collapsed to one knee, his entire body shaking from chakra depletion. Naruto! Sakura's voice called out. She appeared through the trees, Sasuke close behind her. Are you okay? What happened? I'm fine, Naruto managed, though the lie was obvious to anyone paying attention. Just got overextended with my jutsu. But Sasuke was staring at him with an intensity that suggested the Uchiha had noticed something. Whether he'd seen the brief manifestation of the Byakugan or simply sensed a massive chakra discharge, Naruto couldn't determine. We need to move, Sasuke said. That display probably attracted attention. They moved through the forest as quickly as Naruto's depleted state would allow. It took several hours before his chakra reserves recovered enough for him to move normally. And even then, he felt fundamentally changed by the experience. He now possessed two bloodline limits. The Sharingan's copying ability had activated the Byakugan's manifestation, or perhaps vice versa. The precise mechanics didn't matter. What mattered was that he'd succeeded in awakening a second bloodline limit, and the combination of the two was far more powerful than either alone. The Nine-Tails' cryptic words about balance suddenly made sense. The Sharingan and the Byakugan were complements to each other, opposing but equivalent abilities that, when combined, created something transcendent. By the fourth day of the Forest of Death exam, Team 7 still hadn't acquired an Earth Scroll, and time was running out. The exam would end in another day and a half, and any team that hadn't reached the tower with both scrolls would be automatically disqualified. They'd successfully avoided most other teams, taking a path through the deeper sections of the forest where competition was lighter. But the problem was that those deeper sections also had fewer Earth Scroll holders, making their objective increasingly difficult to accomplish. We need to take more risks, Sasuke said, voicing the concern they all felt. We've been too cautious. Caution is what's kept us alive, Sakura objected. If we start taking reckless chances, then we fail the exam, Sasuke interrupted. Which is also failing. We need to find an Earth Scroll holder and force them to surrender it. There's no other way forward. Naruto agreed with Sasuke's logic, though he dreaded what forcing another team to surrender would require. Combat was one thing, he was capable of fighting, but this would mean seriously hurting people to take something from them. They didn't have to wait long for the decision to be forced upon them. A team from the Hidden Leaf Village's own allied regions encountered them in a small clearing. But this wasn't just any team. The leader was Niji Hyuga, a member of the Hyuga clan, possessing the legendary Byakugan. Naruto's breath caught when he recognized who they were facing. Niji was accompanied by 2 other Leaf Village genin, including Lee, a taijutsu specialist. They had an Earth Scroll, just what Team 7 needed. Team 7, Niji greeted, his Byakugan already active, examining them with the penetrating sight of his bloodline limit. We meet again. I'd suggest you surrender now. Fighting will only cause unnecessary suffering. Not happening, Sasuke replied, moving into a combat stance. We take the scroll, or we take it from you. Your confidence is noted, Niji said coolly. But fate has already decided the outcome of this encounter. Your defeat is inevitable. What followed was perhaps the most intense combat Team 7 had engaged in during the exam thus far. Niji's Byakugan's sight gave him extraordinary tactical advantages. He could see their pressure points from any angle, making his offense incredibly precise. His defense was equally impressive. He could block attacks from any direction by using his Byakugan's 360-degree vision. Sasuke held his own relatively well, his Sharingan matching Niji's perception abilities in some ways, though the Byakugan's full-range sight gave Niji the ultimate advantage. Sakura was forced into a purely defensive role, unable to land meaningful offense against an opponent who could see every strike coming. And Naruto found himself in a strange position. He wanted desperately to activate his dual vision, to use the Byakugan's sight to compete with Niji directly. But doing so would expose his secret, would reveal abilities he was supposed to be hiding. So he fought with only his Sharingan, trying to hold his ground without escalating to his full capabilities. It was frustrating and increasingly untenable. The battle was turning against them. Niji was simply too skilled, too experienced, too perfectly suited to combat against their fighting styles. Team 7 was slowly being worn down, their coordination unable to overcome his individual superiority. Then, in a moment of desperation, Naruto made a critical mistake. Niji came at him with a pressure point strike aimed at his shoulder, a non-lethal target chosen because Niji had explicitly stated he didn't want to cause unnecessary suffering. In dodging, Naruto's Sharingan briefly activated his Byakugan sight, desperate for the extra perception to help him evade. Niji's eyes went wide. Impossible, the Hyuga prodigy breathed, his Byakugan suddenly focusing intensely on Naruto. You have the Byakugan? Naruto's heart sank. The secret was out. Naruto? Sakura called, confusion and concern in her voice. What is this? Sasuke demanded, his Sharingan flaring brighter. Niji stepped back, his entire demeanor changing. The cold arrogance was replaced by something almost like awe. How are you manifesting the Byakugan? You're not Hyuga. I would know if there were another Hyuga bloodline outside the clan. It's complicated, Naruto said, his voice tight. Naruto, what's going on? Sakura asked, moving to his side. Do you have the Byakugan? How is that possible? Naruto looked at his teammates, seeing the confusion and hurt in their expressions. The lies had finally caught up with him, and there was no way around it now. I can copy bloodline limits, Naruto said quietly. It's something that awakened a month ago. The Hokage wanted to keep it secret until we understood what was happening. Copy bloodline limits? Sasuke's voice carried an edge that hadn't been there before. Jealousy, perhaps, or a sense of betrayal. You've had this power for a month and never told us. I was ordered not to, Naruto replied. By the Hokage himself. Niji, meanwhile, was processing this information with visible difficulty. A member of a lesser clan, a non-clan member, possessing the Byakugan was theoretically impossible. And yet there it was, manifesting before his eyes. This changes everything, Niji said, his competitive nature rekindling. If you can truly copy the Byakugan, then perhaps you're worthy of a genuine fight. Without waiting for agreement, Niji attacked. But this time, Naruto was ready. He stopped holding back. His dual vision activated, and for the first time, he used both the Sharingan and Byakugan in concert. The Sharingan's copying ability and the Byakugan's penetrating sight combined into something transcendent. He could see Niji's chakra, his pressure points, his movements, and his intentions all simultaneously. More than that, He could see Niji's techniques at work, see how the Hyuga heir was manipulating his chakra to create his famous rotation defense. Understanding the principle, Naruto began to grasp how to counter it. The battle shifted dramatically in Naruto's favor. Naruto's strikes became impossibly accurate, targeting pressure points with surgical precision. His defense became flawless, moving away from threats before they fully manifested. Niji found himself on his back foot, desperately defending against an opponent who'd somehow matched and then exceeded his capabilities. For several minutes they danced in combat, two masters of bloodline limits testing each other's limits. It was the most intense fighting Naruto had experienced since awakening his powers, and it was exhilarating and exhausting in equal measure. Finally, with both combatants breathing hard, Niji disengaged. Enough, the Hyuga prodigy said, genuine respect evident in his voice. You've proven yourself superior in direct combat. But this isn't over, not between us. Someday, we'll fight again, and I'll understand how you've managed this impossible power. The Earth Scroll, Sasuke said, his voice cold. Give it to us, Niji. Niji looked at Sasuke, then at Naruto, then reached into his pouch and withdrew the scroll. He tossed it to Team 7 without ceremony. Consider it a tribute to the strongest opponent I've faced, Niji said. Then he and his team departed, disappearing into the forest. After they'd left, Sakura immediately turned on Naruto. You have explaining to do, she said, her voice a mix of anger and betrayal. You've been lying to us for a month? We're supposed to be teammates. We're supposed to trust each other. I had no choice, Naruto replied. The Hokage ordered. I don't care what the Hokage ordered, Sakura interrupted. You could have at least hinted at something. You could have trusted us with this secret. Sasuke was silent, but his expression was a storm of emotions. Jealousy, hurt, confusion, and something else, something that looked like resignation. My clan's Sharingan is supposed to be the most exceptional ability, Sasuke said quietly. The greatest bloodline limit in existence. And you have that plus the Byakugan? You've become more powerful than me without even trying. It's not like that, Naruto began, but Sasuke cut him off with a gesture. It's exactly like that, Sasuke said. And we all know it. The return journey to the tower was tense and uncomfortable. Team 7 had the scrolls needed to complete the exam, but the bond between them was fractured. Naruto tried to explain his situation multiple times, but Sakura was too angry and Sasuke was too proud to fully accept his apologies. When they reached the tower and turned in their scrolls, a proctor informed them that they'd been among the last teams to arrive. They'd made it, but barely. The third Chunin exam would be held 10 days later, a tournament-style competition where the passing participants would face each other in one-on-one battles. But before that, there would be time for explanations and, hopefully, reconciliation. That evening, after Team 7 had been dismissed, Kakashi called a meeting with Naruto alone. They met at their usual training ground, far from the village proper, where they could speak freely. Niji knows, Kakashi said without preamble. Word of your Byakugan will spread through the Hyuga clan within hours. The Uchiha will hear of it shortly after that. The Hokage said I should keep it hidden, Naruto replied, frustration evident in his voice. But it was impossible to hide once I was in actual combat. I know, Kakashi said. And the Hokage anticipated this possibility. He knew that sooner or later, someone would see your power, and the secret would be exposed. He simply hoped you'd make it through the second exam without revealing yourself. Well, I didn't, Naruto said. And now my teammates hate me. They're hurt and confused, Kakashi corrected. Give them time. They'll come to understand that you were following orders, and they'll recognize that your power is extraordinary rather than threatening. Sasuke didn't look like he was learning to understand, Naruto replied. He looked like he was questioning everything about himself. Kakashi was quiet for a moment. Sasuke's entire identity is built around the Sharingan, around his status as the elite member of the elite Uchiha clan. Learning that you can not only match his Sharingan but combine it with another bloodline limit effectively shatters his worldview. Give him time to process. Over the next several days, Naruto attempted to rebuild his relationships with his teammates. Sakura gradually softened, her anger fading as she came to understand that Naruto had been placed in an impossible position. By the third day, she was treating him normally again, though there was still a hint of lingering hurt. Sasuke was a different matter entirely. The Uchiha prodigy avoided Naruto whenever possible. When they had to interact, his responses were cold and minimal. The friendship, such as it had been, seemed to have cracked under the weight of what Naruto had revealed. On the 5th day after the Forest of Death exam, Sasuke finally confronted Naruto directly. They met on a rooftop at sunset, a location chosen by Sasuke for the privacy it afforded. The wind was picking up, carrying the smell of evening rain. "Explain it to me," Sasuke demanded without preamble. "How you can have the Sharingan? How you can have the Byakugan? How you can have anything? I don't understand it completely myself," Naruto admitted. "But it started with the Sharingan awakening during a training session with Kakashi. Some combination of chakra manipulation and the Nine Tails response triggered it. And then when I was in actual combat, the Byakugan manifested as if responding to the Sharingan's need for balance." "Balance," Sasuke repeated, the word dripping with contempt. "My Sharingan doesn't need balance. It's complete in itself." "Maybe that's the difference," Naruto said. "My abilities seem to work differently. They're not genetic, passed down through bloodlines. There's something new, something that doesn't follow the normal rules." Sasuke was quiet, his dark eyes reflecting the dying light of the sunset. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I've always been the strongest," he said. "It's what I was born to be. The Uchiha heritage, the Sharingan, my clan's legacy, all of it pointed toward me being superior, and I accepted that as my burden and my purpose. To be the best, to excel beyond everyone else, to achieve what others couldn't." He paused, and when he continued, his voice carried a weight of emotion Naruto had never heard from him before. "And now you're stronger than me. Not because of training, not because of effort, but because you have access to powers I can't reach. Powers that shouldn't exist for someone like you. How am I supposed to accept that? How am I supposed to process that my entire worldview was built on a false premise?" "You train," Naruto said simply. "You push yourself harder than anyone else has ever pushed themselves. You develop new techniques and new strategies. You don't give up, no matter how impossible things seem. That's what you've always done, and that's what you need to do now." "It won't be enough," Sasuke replied. "No matter how hard I train, you'll always have access to abilities I don't. The gap between us is insurmountable." "Then we close it together," Naruto said. "As teammates. As friends." Sasuke laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Friends? You've been lying to me for a month, Naruto. You've been training in secret, developing power in secret, hiding your true nature from me. That's not friendship." "You're right," Naruto admitted. "And I'm sorry. But the order came from the Hokage, and I had to follow it. If I'd told you, it would have compromised the secrecy, and that order would have been defied." "So you chose the Hokage over us," Sasuke said. "Over your team. Over me. I chose to survive," Naruto replied, and there was steel in his voice. "I chose to become strong enough to face threats that are coming. Threats that hunt Jinchuriki. Threats that the village is only beginning to comprehend. And yes, I chose to follow orders from the leadership of this village." "That's what you do when you're a ninja." Sasuke stood, and for a moment, Naruto thought the Uchiha might attack him. Instead, Sasuke simply walked to the edge of the roof. "I'll still participate in the Chunin exam with you," Sasuke said, his voice formal. "We're teammates. But I want you to understand something, Naruto. This isn't forgiveness, and it isn't acceptance. This is pragmatism. And after the exam, we're going to have a serious reckoning about where we stand with each other." Then he jumped from the roof, disappearing into the gathering darkness below. Naruto stood alone on the rooftop, feeling the weight of the damage he'd done to his most important relationship. He hadn't lied to betray Sasuke. He'd lied to protect him. But the Uchiha couldn't see it that way, not yet. Over the next few days, as the final exam approached, word of Naruto's dual bloodline limits spread through Konoha like wildfire. The Hyuga clan demanded to know how a non-member could possess the Byakugan. The Uchiha clan council questioned whether Naruto's Sharingan was legitimate, or somehow inferior. The Hokage held meetings with both clans, explaining the situation as much as he could without revealing classified information about Naruto's Jinchuriki status, or the full nature of his awakening. By the time the tournament began, Naruto was famous throughout the village and among the visiting ninja from other villages as well. The ninja who can copy bloodline limits became the subject of intense discussion and speculation. Jiraiya and Kakashi both warned Naruto to be careful during the tournament. Using both the Sharingan and Byakugan would be relatively normal at this point, given that everyone already knew about his dual abilities. But there was a risk that continued manifestation of new powers could draw dangerous attention from those who were hunting Jinchuriki. The Akatsuki will be very interested in you now, Jiraiya cautioned. If they have any members near the village, they'll likely be watching the tournament. Don't reveal anything beyond what you've already shown. The tournament bracket was displayed, and Naruto discovered he'd be facing Sasuke in the second round. The first round would pit other competitors against each other, and only the victors would advance. Watching Sasuke's first round match was illuminating. The Uchiha crushed his opponent with dismissive ease, his Sharingan and Fire Jutsu combining to create an overwhelming offense. But Naruto could see the difference in Sasuke now. There was an edge of desperation to his fighting, as if he was trying to prove something to himself as much as to his opponent. Naruto's own first match came against a kunoichi from the Hidden Stone village. She was skilled and used earth-based jutsu effectively, but Naruto had learned to counter earthen techniques during his training, using his Sharingan to analyze her movements and his wind jutsu to disrupt her techniques. He won relatively easily. Then came the match against Sasuke. The arena fell silent as the two rivals faced each other across the tournament floor. The crowd's energy shifted. They could feel the intensity, the history, the complexity of what was about to unfold. Don't hold back, Sasuke said, his Sharingan already active. Show me everything you can do. Naruto activated his Sharingan in response. Are you sure? Completely sure, Sasuke replied. They attacked simultaneously, their clash explosive and violent. Sasuke's fire jutsu met Naruto's wind jutsu in a collision that created a blast of energy that pushed both competitors backward. Sasuke followed up with taijutsu, his movements precise and deadly, honed by years of Uchiha training. Naruto met him strike for strike, his perception enhanced by the Sharingan allowing him to predict and counter every move. But he deliberately didn't activate his Byakugan. This fight was between them as equals in the abilities they both shared. Using the Byakugan would be a betrayal of what Sasuke was trying to prove. The match raged on for nearly 20 minutes, far longer than most tournament fights lasted. Both competitors were bleeding from various cuts, both were breathing hard, both were pushing their chakra reserves to the limit. Finally, in a moment of mutual exhaustion, they both attempted a finishing move simultaneously. Their jutsu collided directly, creating an explosion that threw both competitors backward, where they landed hard on the arena floor. Neither could continue fighting. The proctor declared it a draw, a rare outcome in the tournament. As medical ninja rushed to treat their injuries, Sasuke locked eyes with Naruto from across the arena, and for the first time since the revelation in the Forest of Death, Naruto saw something like understanding in the Uchiha's eyes. After the medical treatment, Kakashi found Naruto in the recovery area. That was an excellent match, the Jonin said. You two fought with complete synchronization. You were reading each other perfectly. He's still angry with me, Naruto replied. Of course he is, Kakashi said. But he's also beginning to understand that your power doesn't diminish his. You both have unique abilities, and neither of you is inherently superior. You're just different. Over the coming weeks, as the tournament progressed and Naruto faced other competitors, his dual bloodline limits became more and more normalized. By the time the tournament reached its conclusion, everyone accepted that Naruto could use both the Sharingan and Byakugan with equal facility. But during the final celebrations, when everyone was supposed to be celebrating the successful completion of the Chunin exam, Naruto felt a familiar presence in the distance. The vast, terrible presence that had sensed him before. And this time, it was closer, much closer. That night, Naruto reported the sensation to the Hokage, Kakashi, and Jiraiya in an emergency meeting. The Akatsuki are definitely investigating you, Jiraiya said grimly. If they're this interested, it's only a matter of time before they make a move. Then we prepare, the Hokage replied. Naruto, your training will continue and intensify. Kakashi, Jiraiya, and I will develop protocols for protecting him while also advancing his abilities. We need to ensure that when they come, and they will come, Naruto is ready. As Naruto left the Hokage Tower that night, he understood that the true challenge was only beginning. Awakening his bloodline limits had made him stronger, but it had also made him a target. The balance he'd found with his powers was perfect, but it was precarious. And somewhere in the darkness, his hunters were drawing closer. 3 weeks had passed since the conclusion of the Chunin exams, and Naruto found himself in an increasingly complex position within Konoha's social hierarchy. He'd been promoted to Chunin along with Sasuke, a recognition of his demonstrated abilities during the tournament. But the promotion came with complications that extended far beyond simple advancement in rank. The Uchiha Clan Council had officially requested a meeting with Naruto to discuss his Sharingan abilities. The Hyuga clan had demanded similar access. Both clans wanted to understand how he could possess their respective bloodline limits, and both wanted to explore whether his abilities could somehow be taught or replicated within their own bloodlines. Naruto had politely declined both requests with the Hokage's support, but the tension had not dissipated. If anything, it had intensified. The morning after refusing the clan council's invitations, Naruto was summoned to the Hokage's office for what he expected to be a continuation of his chakra-controlled training. Instead, he found the office occupied not just by Sarutobi, but also by Itachi Uchiha. Naruto's breath caught. Itachi Uchiha was a legend, a prodigy who'd achieved elite status at an age even younger than Sasuke, and the one responsible for the near-total annihilation of the Uchiha clan years ago. He was supposedly a missing nin, wanted by the village. His presence here was shocking. Naruto, the Hokage greeted calmly, as if there wasn't a legendary assassin standing in his office. This is Itachi Uchiha. He's here in an official capacity related to your development. Official capacity? Naruto asked, his hand instinctively moving toward a weapon. Stand down, Itachi said, his voice calm but edged with power. If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. It was a statement of fact, not a threat, and it was absolutely true. Naruto forced himself to relax, though every instinct screamed at him to be cautious. Itachi is one of the few people alive who has extensive experience with advanced Sharingan techniques, the Hokage explained. Given your unique situation, I've arranged for him to provide guidance on developing your abilities beyond what Kakashi can teach you. He's a missing nin, Naruto protested. A criminal. Why would he help? Because the Akatsuki threat is more significant than old grievances, Itachi replied. And because you represent an anomaly that interests me professionally. Your ability to copy bloodline limits is unprecedented. I want to understand how it works, and in exchange I'll teach you techniques that would take you years to develop on your own. Over the following weeks, Itachi began training Naruto in advanced Sharingan applications that Kakashi had only hinted at. The most significant was the Mangekyo Sharingan, an evolved form of the Sharingan achieved through specific trauma or enlightenment, granting access to powerful techniques that even standard Sharingan users couldn't access. Your unique nature makes the Mangekyo Sharingan potentially dangerous for you to pursue, Itachi warned during one training session. They were in an isolated location far from the village, hidden even from the ANBU guards that typically shadowed Naruto. Activating it requires experiencing extreme emotional trauma or achieving a profound level of understanding. For someone with your dual bloodlines, the process could be unpredictable. Can I even achieve it? Naruto asked. Given that I'm not genetically Uchiha? That, Itachi replied, is the fascinating question. Everything suggests you shouldn't be able to do anything you've done so far. Yet you're doing it. The Mangekyo Sharingan requires a specific mental state and sufficient chakra reserves. You have both. Whether you can achieve the transformation is something we'll only know by attempting it. Kakashi, meanwhile, was pushing Naruto in different directions. The copy ninja was teaching him techniques that leveraged both his Sharingan and Byakugan simultaneously, creating a fighting style that was uniquely his own. The Sharingan allows you to see and copy, Kakashi explained. The Byakugan allows you to see internal structures and pressure points. Combine them, and you're capable of fighting styles that neither clan could achieve independently. Use that advantage. Sasuke, true to his word, had maintained his position as Naruto's teammate despite the lingering tension between them. They trained together regularly, and while their relationship wasn't what it had been before the revelation, it was becoming something new, a partnership based on mutual respect rather than simple friendship. You're getting stronger, Sasuke observed one afternoon as they sparred. Your taijutsu has improved significantly. So has yours, Naruto replied, blocking a strike that would have been lethal if it had connected. You're pushing yourself harder than ever. Because I have to, Sasuke said, his voice carrying an edge. You're my measuring stick now. If I don't keep pushing, the gap between us will become insurmountable. After their sparring session, Naruto found himself alone with his thoughts in the training grounds. The complexity of his situation weighed on him heavily. He was becoming stronger at an exponential rate, developing abilities that put him at a level far above most ninja his age. But that power came with isolation. His teammates couldn't fully understand what he was experiencing. His teachers were pushing him in different directions toward different goals. The clans wanted to use him. The village wanted to protect him, and somewhere in the darkness, the Akatsuki were hunting him. That night, Naruto reached out toward the Nine Tails with a question that had been bothering him for weeks. Am I still myself? He asked the beast. With all these bloodline limits, all this power, am I still Naruto Uzumaki? The Nine Tails was quiet for a long moment before responding. You're more yourself than ever, the beast rumbled. You've always had the capacity for greatness, Kit. Now you're simply fulfilling that potential. But be careful. Power has a way of changing people. Don't lose sight of who you were while becoming who you need to be. The first real crisis came 3 months after the Chunin exams, when Anbu brought word that Orochimaru, one of the legendary Sannin and a known criminal, had been spotted in the village's territory. Orochimaru was dangerous in ways that even the Hokage treated with utmost caution. He was a master of forbidden jutsu, a genius in sealing techniques, and possessed knowledge of the ninja world that stretched back decades. The fact that he would risk returning to Konoha's territory suggested something significant had drawn his attention. The answer came when Kakashi arrived at Naruto's apartment with news that was both concerning and, in a strange way, validating. Orochimaru has been following your development, Kakashi explained, his visible eye fixed intensely on Naruto. We've intercepted intelligence suggesting he views you as an asset worth capturing. Why? Naruto asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Your ability to copy bloodline limits, Kakashi replied. Orochimaru has spent decades researching ways to transcend human limitations, to access power beyond normal boundaries. Your existence, a ninja who can manifest bloodline limits despite not being born with them, represents something he desperately wants to understand and potentially replicate. So he wants to capture me, study me, and figure out how to make himself stronger, Naruto said flatly. Yes, Kakashi confirmed. Which means we need to increase security around you significantly. The Hokage has approved expanded ANBU protection, and you'll be training in locations that are even more remote and secure than before. That same evening, Jiraiya arrived at the Hokage Tower with research that added another layer of complexity to the situation. I've been investigating the phenomenon of bloodline limit manifestation, the legendary sage explained, spreading ancient scrolls across the Hokage's desk. And I've found something fascinating. There are historical records, fragmentary and often contradictory, of individuals who could access multiple bloodline limits. The texts refer to them as mirrors of the path or collectors of truth. What happened to these individuals? The Hokage asked. Most of the records end with their deaths, Jiraiya replied grimly. Often violent, often at the hands of those seeking to capture or eliminate them. The last confirmed sighting of someone with similar abilities was approximately 200 years ago. After that, the records become sporadic and unreliable. The implication was clear. Individuals with Naruto's abilities were rare enough to be virtually unique, and that rarity often resulted in their becoming targets. We need to accelerate his training, the Hokage decided. If Orochimaru is hunting him, we need to ensure that Naruto is capable of defending himself against threats of that magnitude. It was this decision that led to the most significant development in Naruto's training to date, a partnership with Jiraiya that would extend far beyond the village. 3 months after Orochimaru's interest was confirmed, Jiraiya proposed a radical change to Naruto's training regimen. The village is becoming a cage for you, the sage explained during a meeting with Naruto and the Hokage. You're constantly being watched, constantly restricted, constantly in danger. What if we changed the paradigm? What if you traveled with me? You'd be safer in the wilderness, away from predictable routines that enemies can exploit. And you'd have access to training and knowledge that I can only provide outside the village's boundaries. The Hokage considered this carefully. How long would this journey last? 2 years, minimum, Jiraiya replied. Time enough for Naruto to mature, to develop further control over his abilities, and to reach a level of strength where he can protect himself against threats like Orochimaru and the Akatsuki. Naruto's first instinct was to refuse. 2 years away from Konoha, away from his teammates, away from everything he knew. But he understood the logic. The village was indeed becoming increasingly tense, with shinobi from other villages and various criminal organizations circling like predators sensing weakness. What do my teammates think? Naruto asked. Sasuke has already been told, the Hokage replied. He's processing the information. Sakura will be informed along with you. The decision is ultimately yours, Naruto, but I recommend accepting Jiraiya's offer. That evening, Naruto met with Sasuke for what he knew would be a difficult conversation. 2 years is a long time, Sasuke said, his expression unreadable. When you return, I'll have advanced significantly. The gap between us might reverse. That's the idea, Naruto replied. We both get stronger. When we see each other again, we'll be at a new level. I don't like you leaving, Sasuke admitted, and the honesty surprised Naruto. Despite everything, despite the lies and the secrets, we're partners. Having you gone for that long, it changes things. I know, Naruto said. And I'm sorry. But I think it's necessary. I know it's necessary, Sasuke said quietly. That doesn't make it easier to accept. Sakura took the news surprisingly well, understanding both the necessity and the opportunity it represented. You'll come back stronger, she said with certainty. And hopefully, when you do, you'll have learned enough control that you don't have to keep secrets from us anymore. The week before his departure, Naruto spent time saying goodbye to the village. He visited the ramen stand where Tsuchi had always welcomed him. He sat alone on the swing where he'd spent countless hours as a child, dreaming of recognition and acknowledgement. He stood before the monument of Hokages, looking at the carved faces of those who'd come before, wondering if he'd ever join them up there. His final night in the village, Itachi appeared to him on a rooftop overlooking Konoha. I won't be here when you return, the Uchiha said without preamble. My presence in the village is temporary and tolerated only by the Hokage for the purpose of training you. By the time you return from your journey, I'll be gone. Where? Naruto asked. Hunting the same threats that hunt you, Itachi replied. The Akatsuki is a cancer that must be excised. I've made it my mission to understand their operations from within and dismantle them. In 2 years, when you return, the landscape of the ninja world will have changed significantly. Thank you, Naruto said, for training me. For helping me understand my Sharingan. Don't thank me, Itachi replied. Thank yourself for having the capacity to grow. Few have that ability. Fewer still have the determination to push through it. He paused, and for a moment, his usual mask of calm certainty seemed to slip. Guard your heart carefully, Naruto. Power like yours comes with a price, and that price is often paid in isolation. Don't lose yourself in the pursuit of strength. Then he was gone, vanishing into the darkness like a specter. The next morning, Naruto stood at the village gates with a single pack containing everything he owned. Jiraiya was beside him, pipe in hand, ready to depart. Kakashi was there to see him off, along with Sasuke and Sakura. Come back stronger, Sasuke commanded, his expression serious. Make us proud, Sakura said, embracing him briefly. And take care of yourself. I will, Naruto promised, pulling away. He looked back at the village one final time, committing the image to memory. I'll be back. I promise. Then he turned and walked through the gates with Jiraiya, toward the wilderness and the unknown future that awaited him. As Naruto and Jiraiya disappeared into the distance, heading toward the northern territories, events in the wider ninja world were accelerating in ways that would ultimately draw them back together. The Akatsuki, the mysterious organization that had been hunting Naruto, was becoming increasingly active. Jinchuriki across the world were being captured and killed with systematic efficiency. The organization's true purpose, sealing the tailed beasts into a powerful weapon, was becoming clear to those with intelligence networks advanced enough to recognize the pattern. Konoha, as one of the 5 great ninja villages, was monitoring the situation carefully. The Hokage, recognizing the global threat, began establishing alliances and preparing the village for the conflict that seemed inevitable. Sasuke, for his part, threw himself into training with renewed intensity. With Naruto gone, there was a void in his drive for advancement. But instead of being paralyzed by it, Sasuke used it as fuel. He trained under multiple masters, developing his Sharingan further, pushing toward his own version of the Mangekyo Sharingan through sheer force of will and determination. Sakura advanced in her medical training under Tsunade, becoming increasingly skilled at healing jutsu and combat applications of her enhanced strength. She also began serving on more dangerous missions, building the experience and skill necessary to survive in the increasingly chaotic world. The village itself transformed. The relatively peaceful period that had followed the resolution of the Jinchuriki conflict years ago was ending. War was coming, and Konoha was preparing for it. 3 months into Naruto's journey with Jiraiya, word reached the village of the first major incident related to the Akatsuki's operations. A Jinchuriki from the hidden waterfall village had been captured and killed, and the tail beast had been extracted from their body. The power released in the process had devastated a significant portion of the countryside. The message was clear: the Akatsuki was serious, and they were close to completing their objectives. In response, the Hokage made a decision that would reshape the future of the ninja world. He called for a grand alliance between the 5 great ninja villages to oppose the Akatsuki threat. It was a radical move, bringing together nations that had been enemies or neutral to each other for generations. The alliance included Konoha, the Hidden Sand Village, the Hidden Cloud Village, the Hidden Mist Village, and the Hidden Stone Village. The unified front was formidable, but everyone recognized that it might not be enough, which was why the search for Naruto became increasingly urgent. Naruto's ability to copy bloodline limits, combined with his status as a Jinchuriki, made him a potentially crucial asset in the coming conflict. The Hokage authorized Jiraiya to return to Konoha with Naruto as soon as the sage felt the young ninja had advanced sufficiently. In the mountains far to the north, Naruto was pushing himself to limits he hadn't known existed. Jiraiya had taken him to training locations that were harsh and unforgiving, environments where survival itself was a challenge. The sage was pushing him to develop not just new jutsu but a fundamentally different approach to combat and chakra manipulation. "You're still thinking in terms of individual techniques," Jiraiya criticized during one training session. "Copies of other people's jutsu, manifestations of bloodline limits. But true mastery comes from understanding the underlying principles and creating your own expression of those principles." "How do I do that?" Naruto asked. "By pushing beyond what you've learned," Jiraiya replied. "By finding what's uniquely yours, what no one else can replicate. You have the tools, now use them to build something entirely new." It was this focus on self-creation rather than imitation that led to Naruto's next major breakthrough. Deep in a canyon, practicing with wind jutsu, Naruto began experimenting with combinations. Instead of using wind techniques as standalone attacks, he began weaving them together with his physical movements, with his chakra manipulation, creating a style that was entirely his own. The result was a new approach to combat that transcended simple jutsu copying. It was a personal expression of his abilities, a fighting style that leveraged his Sharingan's perception, his Byakugan's pressure point knowledge, his wind affinity, and his massive chakra reserves in a unified whole. "That's it," Jiraiya breathed, watching from a safe distance as Naruto demonstrated the technique. "That's what transcendence looks like." But even as Naruto achieved this breakthrough, word was reaching them of escalating conflicts across the ninja world. The Akatsuki was growing bolder. Entire villages were being threatened. The alliance between the 5 great villages was being tested as the organization pushed against their collective defense. "It's time," Jiraiya said one evening. "You've advanced far enough. The world needs you now." 2 years had passed since Naruto left Konoha. He was no longer the impulsive, hot-headed genin who'd departed. He was transformed, hardened by training, refined by experience, and carrying power that was difficult to fully comprehend. As he and Jiraiya prepared to return to Konoha, Naruto felt the presence he'd sensed before, the vast, terrible presence that had first drawn his attention to the dangers hunting him. It was closer now, and he could sense the hunger in it. The Akatsuki had found his scent again. The journey back to Konoha became a race, with Naruto and Jiraiya moving at speeds that pushed the limits of physical capability. They knew that returning meant stepping directly into the conflict that had been building in their absence. But Naruto was ready. He was no longer just a copier of bloodline limits. He was something new, something unprecedented. A ninja who had transcended the limitations of bloodlines and clans, who had created his own path through sheer determination and unwavering will. As the gates of Konoha appeared on the horizon, Naruto felt a strange sense of homecoming mixed with apprehension about what awaited him in the village he'd left behind. Everything had changed, and the real conflict was only beginning.